Episode 77, Check Engine.
This is the One Extraordinary Marriage Podcast, home of the 7 Days of Sex Challenge, featuring your hosts, the authors of the groundbreaking new book, Stripped Down, Tony and Elisa DiLorenzo.
Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Elisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
And we are back.
We're back.
Just back from our marriage retreat this year.
Yeah.
CRB's marriage retreat in Indian Wells, California.
Same place it's been the last 3 years. Lovely place. It's always fun to go back. It's almost getting ready to go down there, and because it's in the same place every year, it just feels like this is just where we're supposed to be. It's refreshing. We know sort of where we're going to eat and sort of what we're going to do, so we're not wasting a lot of time and energy on that, and really able to spend time on each other.
Okay, back up.
Yes.
Okay, we know. Well, we got to get to date night since you already said. Well, we know where we're going to eat because. No. Not
about that. But I'm just saying, like lunchtime, and even this year, for breakfast and everything, we just sort of knew we were going to just eat in our room. We have, Elisa and I have been turned on to Shakeology, and it's just awesome, and we love it, and it's a meal and a drink. And so for us, it's cool to be able to just bring that along with us and not have to be running around and rushing around for another meal, because the morning sessions were starting at 9:30, and many of you would be going, wow, that should be easy. But you know what? When you don't have kids, get a little lazy.
Well, kids and the blackout curtains that they put in hotels.
Yeah.
Because in our bedroom here in San Diego, we just have like shears. So
right.
We really do kind of follow the seasons in terms of wake up. But, you go to a hotel and it's black in your room. And there were times, they weren't quite overlapping. So there'd be just this little sliver of light. And we'd look at the clock and think, oh, it really is time to wake up. Yeah,
well, on Saturday, though, we chose to get up early.
We did.
And get our workouts in, which was really fun. That was the first time on the retreat that we did a workout. And it was really cool because there's this awesome fitness center they had. And wall-to-wall mirrors on one of them, which was really cool. And it was just a fun time.
Yeah, I think all those older hotel guests were a little put out that we were in their class kind of like actually doing a workout. They really seemed to kind of sense just a smidge of hostility that these young kids were doing their workouts in their class. But there wasn't a class going on there, but it seemed like, and I'm assuming they're probably like timeshare residents.
Oh, and they just sort of do their own thing.
They come in, they do their own thing. And now they got these young kids, doing these two crazy workouts. You're like jumping all around doing insanity. And, I'm there in the middle of my Brazilian butt lift, and these, elderly residents were coming in, and I'm like, you're grunting and I'm sweating, and it was entertaining.
And I was sweating and grunting.
Yeah, either way.
Wow. We weren't making love in there, though.
No, sorry. So that
wasn't happening in there. But it was a good time. And again, when I say it's really nice to go back to some place and do a marriage retreat at the same place, because Elisa and I just know, okay, well, we're going to go have lunch over there. There's this really cool, it's the Indian Wells Golf Club. They have a spectacular restaurant, really good, beautiful patio, and we just know we're going to go there because we're not driving around trying to find some food and then get back and all this jazz. We're able to just really stay relaxed and mellow and calm.
And it was nice because we had Thomas the same way that we had last year.
We had Thomas.
He's just kind of a friendly, fun guy, and we enjoyed our time with him. And this year was different for us because last year, many of you were participating in the first annual 7 Days of Sex Challenge with us while we were there, and that added a different dimension to the retreat for us because we were very focused on responding to your emails and what was going on with the challenge, and so we were very very distracted last year. I think.
Yes. No.
We weren't
right
so
on.
focused on our marriages, and yes, we were there at the retreat, but it was more about like keeping the 7 Days of Sex challenge going. And so this year we had no obligations to, we weren't doing a challenge. That's the reason why the challenge was moved up. One of the many reasons. We had not been invited to speak. And so we were actually just able to go and participate.
Yep.
Kind of a novel idea. It's the first time in 3 years that we've been attending that we weren't, and not that we don't love speaking, we do, but it was nice to actually be able to go to the retreat and just participate. Just
be there.
Just be there and be there together and spend time together, both just the two of us and with other couples. And we're going to talk about that a lot tonight, but I do have to say, okay, so my dear sweet husband, we're working out together, and it must have been sometime yesterday after our workout, and you actually said something to the effect of, I've been riding hard for the last 7 years, but the last 3 weeks that we've been working out together have been some of the best 3 weeks, in spite of all of the accomplishments on the bike for the last 7 years. And I told you this morning when we were out for our walk, because yes, we did get up and walk this morning. We're kind of into this physical thing, and so it's perpetuating itself.
Yeah, but it's also a time for us just to get out and move, and we weren't eating the best, and for Elisa and I, that sort of messes up with us, and so for us just to get up and get moving, it just charges us. It gets us sort of mentally prepared, so we don't go from our hotel room to walk across the hotel lobby and out to the conference center to then sit down again for another 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
So
we need our movement.
Yeah, we just need to move and get our blood flowing.
But it was just, I look at your last 7 years on the bike, and I look at all you've accomplished, whether it's been the double centuries or just, we get to December 31st and I'm hearing the reports on, it was a 6,000 mile year. It was a 5,000 mile year. And I look at everything that you've accomplished and the countless hours and miles that you've spent on the bike in the last 7 years. And, I want to share with everyone how much it meant to me that you look at this last 3 weeks that we've been working out together, doing our own stuff, but, dragging each other out of bed at 5 o'clock or 5:15 in the morning, that motivating accountability. To have you say that's been really meaningful to you, meant a lot to me. And I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was, lots of very precious, wonderful moments.
Yeah.
Together, and excuse me.
It was just a good time. Mm-hmm. We got to hang out with some new friends. We got to meet other folks that we hadn't met before. We got to see some old friends there and talk to some other folks. So all in all, it was awesome. It really was. It's always hard leaving. I wish that we'll get to one of these days where after on a Sunday, we're able to just stay another night and not leave till Monday, because that would be really stellar. Because I would love to just be able to unwind on the Sunday afternoon, take a nap, get by the pool, chill out by the pool, do a simple dinner, and then, get up on Monday. Yeah, and then just get home. That's what I would like to do eventually.
Yeah, instead we rushed back to your parents' house and picked up Alex, and then rushed back to San Diego to pick up Abby, and
and then all hell breaks loose.
Well, okay, so we pick up Abby, and this is just a funny little story before we get into tonight's topic, but we pick up Abby, and our friend who was watching her is like, she was great all weekend, and Abby's just, so excited because she didn't throw any fits all weekend. So we get in the car, and I look at the clock, and I'm like, we've got 1 hour. 1 hour till she loses it, because she's been, great behavior all weekend. And, which you love hearing. I mean, if your kid's spending the weekend with somebody else, you love hearing that they were wonderful and there were no problems. And, yeah, no joke. It was like 10 minutes. And she's just suddenly so frustrated that her marker won't work on her dry erase board the way she wants it. And she can't draw a fish just the way she wants it. And, it just kind of, but I kept looking at Tony and just saying, you know what? We knew this was coming. She's had it all keyed up all weekend that she's had to be good. And, that's 48 hours of good behavior. Mm-hmm. Where sometimes we're lucky if we get 10 minutes after she's woken up in the morning that are consistent. So she ended up just falling asleep on the couch watching a movie. And,
yeah,
she was just exhausted.
She was. She was.
You know,
We all were, I think, at that point.
Yeah, it was just a good mellowing out time. But we did have that time where we were leaving from the retreat to picking up Alex, a good 45 minutes plus all the time we had to talk this weekend to really start to process the marriage retreat. And the theme this year, there's usually an overriding theme, was talking about relating it to automotive cars.
Right. And I made that, and it's interesting that it was, because it was just a couple of episodes ago where I made that analogy that when the check engine light goes on, most people will take care of that within, a specific amount of time, because it's there, it's flashing at them. But their own marriage, when that check engine light goes on, when your marriage light goes on, I should say, most and many folks will wait up to 6 years before they seek out help or counseling or therapy, which leads to many, many problems, as those of you know who may have waited that long or who are waiting that long. So it was very interesting that the whole retreat this weekend was called, what was it called again? I can't even remember. Do you got it with you? If you don't, no big deal.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head.
I don't remember.
But we want to talk about check engine.
Mm-hmm.
And they threw out some interesting statistics about how long people actually drive around with their check engine light on before they do something. And one of the pastors actually asked how many people have a check engine light currently on in their vehicle, and there were quite a few hands. I think it was about 10%. Based on the statistics, and there's about 10% of the audience, the participants, who had check engine lights on currently. And when we're in this type of environment, when we pull ourselves away from the busyness, and I will tell you right now, the computers only came to play the workout DVDs. Mm-hmm. So we did have them with us, but we did not pay for internet access. We did not do that. We had our phones. Tony did spend some time that was acknowledged on his BlackBerry. Good word that came from. His Droid, doing some stuff that he had to take care of, and it was fine because I was just chilling. But we talked about that. It wasn't like, and there was one time where I'm like, really? Kid, can we wrap it up with the phone? Right.
And you did bring it up, but it didn't go.
It wasn't an issue. It wasn't like,
it didn't come to the pool. It didn't come to date night. It just stayed locked up in the room.
So, again, unplugged. We never turned on the TV.
No,
in
we
our
didn't.
Room. It was really just time for us to be together. And
what was the most enjoyable time for you?
Okay, I want to say having dessert, but that's only because, and you guys wouldn't understand that, but having dessert was equated to making love for a number of couples. And so, we just had some phenomenal lovemaking sessions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we did.
Were you looking for something else?
No, I was just wondering, because we hadn't. For myself, it was both mornings just sitting out on the patio on our deck and just enjoying the cool morning, which for the desert at this time of the year is not common. Typically, I mean, you can wake up at 6 a.m. and it's 100 degrees down there, and it was just
we had
beautiful.
Gorgeous weather.
Yeah, I mean, it was in maybe the high 80s.
Yeah, Tony was enjoying himself so much he almost wanted to play hooky from this morning's session. He's like, "Come on!" I was just enjoying such a good time, and this is so nice. And
that time with you just out there was really fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was just,
even though we weren't talking much, or it was the nonverbal communication, the time just being spent. Because if there's one thing I would love for us to do more of, is that at home. The problem is as many of you know, when you have kids, that is a tough time to take time away. Mm-hmm. It's just, unless your kids are older and they can feed themselves or they sleep in later and they're not bugging you. But in our household, it's really tough. And I really do enjoy that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've got one that sleeps in and one that wakes up early. So that's kind of a...
And for those of you who do read your Bible in the morning and stuff, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I can't personally. I've tried it numerous times, and really I tend to just fall asleep. I can't read that early in the morning because it puts me to sleep. But I do enjoy just being around Elisa and just drinking whatever we have. Like I said, this weekend we had our Shakeologies, picking on some nuts and some fruits, reading my SI magazine. That to me is good. Or Prevention magazine, whatever I had this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
So we need these kids to get grown up so we can enjoy that
I think
more.
if we could just get Abby to sleep in.
Yeah, that would work
that,
too.
That would give us that time.
Mm-hmm.
She's just the early bird. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was, kind of going back to this whole, when you unplug, when you get yourself away from the distractions of life, you really have an opportunity to evaluate where you are, and specifically where your marriage is. It was one of those things where, this weekend, even prior to leaving, just, you know how it is when you're trying to get out of town and it seems like all of the stressors just start stacking up. And we'd had I had some issues with some things that had gone on earlier in the week. And so I had to resolve that with Tony, before I could even contemplate going. I was at the point where I was almost like, you know what, I don't even want to go on this marriage retreat.
Yeah. Friday.
And so, and even Thursday night, you and I sat down and had a talk, and it was just, Tony had made an offer to a friend that I wasn't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had to come clean and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable about this offer. And it wasn't anything that he had done with any type of malicious intent. It was just, it's something that I wasn't comfortable with. It felt like it was crossing some of the boundaries in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, and that was really, I just said, you know what, I need to talk to you about this. I need to tell you that I feel like this is crossing boundaries, and I'm just going to ask you, basically to rescind this offer. And, because I knew in my own head that if we didn't talk about this before Friday came, when we were leaving for the marriage retreat, that I was going to be a pain in his butt all weekend long, because it was just going to fester, and I was going to have to be, in the supposed happy place, because we're on a marriage retreat and we're away from the kids and, all this good stuff. And I was going to have to put on a mask. And we talked so much about that I knew I couldn't go
right
with that. So we talked about it Thursday night, got ourselves in a good place. Friday, just the stressors of trying to get out of town. Boom, boom, boom. And so finally we're there, and, it's just us.
Right.
And it gave us, we had dinner with some new friends, and it just gave us time to start taking temperature. What's going on with us?
Mm-hmm.
How is our marriage doing right now? And when you're in a room with 30, 40 couples, there are marriages there from, just a couple of years to, we had one couple there that had been married 65 years.
And a number of them in the 20 plus, 30 plus year range too.
I mean, just all over the board.
Yeah.
But you've got couples who are in really good places, and you've got couples that are barely hanging on by a thread.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we talk about check engine and we talk about, naming this podcast, I'm going to encourage you this week to take a look and see if the check engine light's on in your marriage. Are there some bells and whistles that are going off about things that aren't being discussed? I mean, we had one of the opening exercises that Pastors Ken and Pam did was they gave everybody a card and said, don't put your name on the card. These are all going to be anonymous, but write down one thing that you wish you could change about your marriage.
Right.
And so you've got roughly, I think there were 30 couples, so 60 people,
yes,
give or take, 60, 70 people. And I can't tell you how many people said, hold on, I wrote it down. They would love to spend more time together. The top 3 were more time together. They wish they had better communication, and they wish there was more intimacy in their marriage. Now there were other things that came up 1 and 2, but those were the I started writing them down because I kept hearing them so much. I wish we spent more time together.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we talked more. I wish we had better communication. I wish we had better intimacy. And some of you might be listening right now going, okay, we got all 3. Or we got 2 out of those 3. Or we got 1 out of those 3. Your check engine light is on.
Mm-hmm.
If that has even just registered in your head, look at your dashboard on your marriage and recognize the fact that your check engine light is on and you need to get it serviced. You need to sit down today. Call up your spouse and say, hey, we need to, tonight after the kids go to bed, or, when I come home from work, or whatever that time is, it's an immediacy. It's an urgent action item.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when we hear this many couples saying that this is a problem in their marriage, and we know a lot of you listening to us have been listening to us for a long time, and we know you've been working on some of these areas. Some of you may be joining us for the first time because you stumbled upon us through iTunes or through the videos on YouTube, or, a friend of a friend of a friend forwarded, one of our messages, and we're so glad you're with us. And you might be thinking, okay, you know what? I've got some issues here.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have time to waste if the check engine light in your marriage is on.
Or has been on for a long time.
Or has been on and you haven't taken it in, you haven't taken your marriage in for service. You haven't made that decision. We met a couple that, we happened to sit down. Tony and I do this thing when we go to retreats like this. We notice that people we're creatures of
habit.
Thank you. And so, people go in and they find their seats.
On the first night.
And that's where they sit for the next 2 days.
That's their seat.
I mean, and okay, back up. We are creatures of habit. We sit in the same row every weekend at church. But that's because, we have to sit up in front so we're not distracted by everybody.
Right. Yeah.
So we are creatures of habit too. But at marriage retreats, we love to meet new people.
Yeah.
This is a great way to, meet couples that we don't know. And so, the first night we sit in one seat, and then the next morning we go in and we're like, okay. And it kind of messes with people when you sit at their table and you weren't at their table before, because they're like, oh, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, where am I supposed to sit? Because you took my seat.
Right.
And so we sat at a new table. And one of the things that they had done was they'd played this kind of newlywed game. And, it was 5 questions about your marriage. And so we were one of the 9 couples that won. Well, the funny thing is that the prize was a copy of our book.
Right.
So apparently we know each other well enough to win a copy of Stripped Down, 13 Keys to Unlocking Intimacy in Your Marriage. And, but this couple that was sitting with us, they were so excited. They're like, oh my gosh, we're so glad you sat at our table. And, they were like over the top excited. And we had no idea why. Well, as the day wore on, we got to know them. And here's a couple, and hats off to them. They recognized a few months ago that intimacy was an issue in their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And they went out and found an intimacy coach. And while it hasn't totally brought them to where they want to be, they took a step that a lot of couples never take. They realized there was a problem. Hello, check engine light is on, flashing, alarms are going off. And they said, we can't function in our marriage this way. We need help. We're going to go find help.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've talked about this so many times, and we talk about the fact that, what, if your weight's a problem, you go find a trainer at the gym. Like if you don't like the way you look, if you want to get more fit, finding a trainer for your physical being is so accepted. If you're in business and you need a coach to, get you to that next level in your business life, so accepted. Oh yeah, I'm working with a coach. He's helping me do this. Da, da, da. We have issues in our marriages. Oh, not going to get help for that. Don't want to tell anybody I've got problems in my marriage.
Even though you're driving down the road, and like Elisa said, that nice red or orange light is just glaring at you. And here's the thing, folks, and this is from experience over the last, 14 and a half years of marriage. I'll tell you, when your marriage is right, it seems like everything else goes right. Number one, always, you got to be straight up with God. And right after God, it's your marriage. And I know we're going to go through tough times. I know we're going to go through good times. But I will have to say some of the most prosperous times in my business and my my outdoor other activity life is when Elisa and I are on the same page. There's just something about it that allows me to be free and open and alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Elisa and I are straight, I mean, the business just runs. There's something about it. But when Elisa and I are butting heads, I can tell how that changes my attitude, and it changes and affects the way I perform my work. And because I work in a service industry, that can affect our income. You know, when somebody calls into me and asking me about their dent on their car, and I'm not in a good place, I tend to be short, and I don't give a rat's ass if I get the job or not, which is not a good place to be, because I need to be putting food on the table for my family. And so, you know, there are those times, and I've recognized it over the years, that, you know, when I'm getting like that, I got to talk to Elisa and let her know, hey, there's something going on, because I'm not right. And it's affecting me, and it's affecting my work. And because it affects my work, it becomes this weird circular spiral downward, you know? And so you really got to look at this. And we're not always saying you got to go find a counselor. We're not saying that at all. For those of you who are really having struggles, it's necessary, we believe. For those of you who are just having those communication issues, you can jump on over to oneextraordinarymarriage.com. You can click on the resources tab, and right there we have 77 questions. It's a PDF, print it out. Start asking questions. Start talking. You know, open it up. This is the thing, and we go to these retreats, and I love them, but I always see it. I see it. The nudges, the elbows, the looks, the stares, and all of those are telling me, when the speaker is up there, that one of the spouse or either of the spouses are looking at each other going, oh, we should be talking about that. Mm-hmm. But they're not. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to tell you sometimes to get over those humps. The cool thing is that since we've been doing this for almost 2 years now,
year and a half,
we've had so many great stories from those of you who have been holed up, have not wanted to talk, have not wanted to communicate, and you've broken free. And it's different for all of you. Mm-hmm. Some of you, it's been the 7 Days of Sex Challenge. That's what it was. That's what got you guys talking. Some of you have written in and said, hey, your guys' book really allowed us to talk. Some of you have said, hey, those 77 questions made us talk. Others of you have picked up the couple's devotional Bible that we speak of. It helps you to talk. It's going to be different for all of you. You know, it's going to be different. But you got to keep searching. If you're in this place and you're not finding it, you got to keep searching and looking for an angle, some way that allows you guys to sit down and talk. And for those of you who are doing great, you know it doesn't just, you know you're not just walking on the mountain high. Mm-hmm. You know it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes work, because that check engine light can come on at any time. And if we ignore it, even if we know we're in a good spot, Elisa and I have done this numerous times. We're doing good. The check engine light comes on. We ignore it. All of a sudden we explode. Something comes to a head, and we got to talk, because we've ignored it. The one thing I have learned over the years of being married is that if you ignore stuff, it's going to bite you in the butt.
Well, we heard that analogy today. Mary James, who was leading worship for us, she talked about, a rug is supposed to be a rug, but when we sweep things underneath it, all it's going to do is cause us to fall.
Right.
And I thought, what an amazing visual. Mm-hmm. Because how often do we, in our marriages just say, oh, I'm just going to sweep that under a rug. But then that rug starts to rise because there's all those little things, festering underneath it. And, you or your spouse is going to trip on that rug, and all of the garbage, all of the dirt that's underneath it, things that you haven't talked about, time that you haven't spent together, intimacies that you have not worked on.
Right.
You know, and we sat in this room for the last 2 days, and you know, you look at couples and you can see, you know, where things are. And I'm not saying we're experts. I mean, you guys know all too well, you know, we are not counselors. We do not counsel. We do not have doctorates in psychology or anything like that. A lot of it's just observing people.
And we've been through the school of hard knocks.
You know, check out episode 4 if you're just joining us for the first time. We really lay it all out on the line.
Yeah.
And
we just love you guys. Really. We do. We love you guys, and you're family to us. And so whenever we get these little tidbits and stuff, we want to share it with you guys, because if it can affect our marriage in a positive way, we know it can affect yours.
Absolutely.
And so one thing I want to point out is this week, a very good friend of ours, Gina Paris, is putting together and has put together the Sexy Summit teleseminar series. She has 10 experts on this series. You can get it at oneextraordinarymarriage.com/sexy summit. I will have a link in the show notes. And for 5 days, there are going to be 10 experts, 2 a day, talking about romance, passion, sex. Elisa and I were very grateful to be one of those. So you guys have heard a lot of what we got to say. And you know what? Actually, Gina brought up some really great questions, and we dive into some other areas that I don't think we've even talked about on the podcast before. So jump on over there. You do need to sign in to get free access to it. If you like it and you want the transcripts, you want to keep all the MP3s, there is a purchase price for that. And I don't know what it is. And it is an affiliate link, just so you guys know that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are so many ways to enhance what's going on in your marriage. Mm-hmm. And if there are issues, if the check engine light's coming on, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about the communication piece, but I'm also thinking about a girlfriend that shared with me, you know, she and her husband went on date night a few weeks ago, and he works very long hours. She's at home with the kids, and they found themselves at a restaurant looking across the table from each other, trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
And they've been married less than 10 years, I think, like around that 7-8 year mark. Mm-hmm. But found themselves in a situation where it's like, wow, what do we do? You know, what do you want to talk? You know, like awkward.
Yeah.
And
that's
you
tough.
know, it's tough. But you know what I saw this weekend, and what I see every time we go to a marriage retreat, is that these are not insurmountable obstacles. You know, what might seem like, okay, we just can't talk to each other anymore, isn't an end. It's just a challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're not spending time, you know, enough time together, like some of these couples said, I wish we could spend more time together, then you have to make the effort. Mm-hmm. If you want more intimacy in the marriage, the two of you need to get on the same page as far as that goes, and make the effort to change what is not working.
Right.
And you know, I call that a challenge because you first kind of have to get on the same page about it. You know, you have to acknowledge that this is an issue in your marriage. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got to acknowledge, both of you, that this check engine light is on. And it might be like, you know, fire engine red for one partner and just kind of a dull orange or maybe not even registered. But you both have to be aware. You got to talk through it. It's like, you know, Thursday night when I had this issue going on with me, and I had to tell Tony, I'm like, I don't really want to bring this up, but I need to, because I know I'm going to be the cause of problems this weekend if I don't bring it up. Mm-hmm. You know, and I can tell how far we've come at the fact that I was not ridiculous about it. I didn't blow up and say, well, you know, you've got to do it this, you know, you've got to do it my way. I was just like, you know, I need to let you know this makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And can I ask you not to do this? And I just presented my case and just said it would really mean a lot to me if you could not do this.
Yeah.
And, a couple of years ago, probably even when we did our first 60 days, or only 60 days when we did the 60 days.
I was going to say we only did one.
Yeah. That's probably not happening again in this lifetime. Not 60 days. I don't know that I would have had that same ability to communicate. I don't think I had that same ability to communicate with you.
Right. No, we didn't.
And it's a growth process.
Right.
And if you're in a good place now, you work on getting it even better.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a not so great place now, then you work on getting it to the point where it's good. It's baby steps. And some days you feel like you're going backwards. And sometimes you'll have those times where you sit down and you talk and you're like, yeah, that's kind of like my old behavior. Like I've used all of those inflammatory words and I've picked on you and I've done all this kind of stuff. And that's the way I used to be. And it's kind of hard to unwire all of that stuff that has been hardwired for so long.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I used to be, Tony put up with a lot in the early years of our marriage in terms of poor communication skills from this girl. I would withdraw. I would be, picky, just all kinds of bad communication skills. And so to be at a point where we can have a conversation to say, you know what, calmly, just need to talk to you about this, and have him not shut down or be defensive or, just say, okay, I hear what you're saying. And, those are valid points, and putting it within the confines of creating. I mean, we've created this safe place in our marriage.
Right.
Tony talks all the time about how when he's got to bring something up to me, his palms get all sweaty. And he even said something this weekend. I'm like, palms sweaty? That doesn't mean that the nerves go away, because there's still that perceived risk in making ourselves vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But as you work on your communication, as you work to make that check engine light go away, whether it's communication or intimacy or time together or whatever.
Finances.
And we heard a lot of couples that our CRB is actually doing
Financial Peace University.
Financial Peace University. They just had 80 people. I think it was 80 people go through.
80, yeah.
And they're getting ready to do it again in the fall. Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. And, huge check engine light
going on.
If finances are a problem, now we're saying this, and some of you are probably nodding your heads as you're listening to this going, oh yeah, that's our check engine light. When we had couples that we were sitting around with, and this one couple in particular is like, do you guys know, are you guys thinking of doing this? And we're like, well, actually,
we've done it.
We've done it. I went through Dave Ramsey counselor training, we buy into Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And, we got to talking, we were able to share with them our journey through massive amounts of debt. And, and it started breaking down the walls that they had between themselves.
Right.
It
was giving them hope.
It was giving them hope. And it was allowing, our story to break down some of the barriers they had between themselves and ask questions of themselves on things that they need to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can give no greater gift than the gift of transparency. Whether, you're talking to your spouse about the fact that there are issues with your finances, or there are issues with your intimacy, or there are issues with your communication, or whatever it might be, the gift of transparency it's a love
really
that you
is.
give, because it says, I love you enough to be vulnerable, to take off all my masks, and to just be who I am and honest with you. And if this is a problem in our marriage, I'm trusting in our marriage enough. I have enough faith in our marriage, and I love you enough to lay this all down in front of you.
Yeah, it really is. And gosh, if there's one thing that I could pinpoint in our marriage that has allowed us to really have the enhancement in all forms of intimacy that we've experienced over these last 4 years. It's being transparent. It's being open, and it's being honest and real with each other every day. As much as it hurts and as much as sometimes we don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that every time we do it and we open up and there's that little sting of hurt, there's 2 leaps forward of just being closer to you.
Absolutely.
And the moment, that minor moment of pain is so worth it because we get so much closer together.
Mm-hmm.
And we get so much more connected. And it's tough. It's tough, but looking back, it's the best gift we've given each other is being transparent and open with each other.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you out there who are going, gosh, I just want that. Please show me how, share with me. The book that I would recommend for you is Beau's Cafe. A fantastic book, a fantastic novel. And I would pick that up. It's one that helped me to realize, and Elisa as well, she read it after I did, that just grabbed us and made us truly understand what it means to take down these walls and to be open and honest with each other.
Mm-hmm. And we heard a lot of people talk about that this weekend. Again, Mary James did worship. She and her husband Dan did worship for us, along with Gary Livesey. And, Dan and Mary shared their testimony. And one of the things that Mary said at the end that really touched me is that she encouraged both men and women, if you're in a small group, whether you're, together or, a same-sex small group, men's Bible study, women's Bible study, even in those environments, when you're not with your spouse, be transparent. There could be somebody sitting there next to you in your women's Bible study that is dealing with the same hurts, the same struggles that you are. There could be another couple in your couples group. I mean, I remember the first time that Tony and I went to a couples group, and we start laying out who we are, kind of just like, whoop, here we are. You're going to love us or not, but this is who Tony and Elisa are. And it changed the dynamic of that group so much so that the leader had come up to us and made a comment
right
to Tony that we've never heard that kind of openness. And this group had been meeting, I think at that time, for 2 years.
Right.
And so I so strongly encourage the transparency, because not only is it a gift that you give to a spouse, it's a gift that you give to your friends. If you can be real with your friends, then you know what? They're going to be friends that will stand the test of time, because they know that your heart is in the right place. They never have to question it. Your spouse never has to question it if they know that you're going to be transparent with them.
Yeah, totally.
So it was an amazing weekend.
It was.
And I know we're getting to the end of this episode, and there's so much more that we want to share, and so I know it'll come up in future podcasts. The really exciting thing is that we are launching a small group on the book Stripped Down here in 2 weeks through CRB, our home church, and we've actually filled all of the spaces that we had for couples in that. So we're very excited about that coming up, and just we've actually had a couple of couples say, we can't make it to that. Can we just do a home study? Can we get the book and do a home study? And you absolutely can. Those of you that have been listening, our book is available in, hard copy or ebook or audiobook.
Soft copy.
Okay.
A physical book.
A physical book. Thank you. See, that's why I have a tech guy in my life. He handles all that stuff. I just get to talk. But it's a great self-study, because it's written, he said, she said, and then there are the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking about some of these topics, like we told some of the couples this weekend, you don't have to read the book cover to cover. flip through and look at what some of the topics are and say, oh, we probably need to talk about this.
Yeah.
And make it work in your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we say, we talked about this a lot this weekend, the fact that when we started this podcast, we named it One Extraordinary Marriage, and our thought had been, if we ever even help just one marriage,
mm-hmm.
then everything that we have done will have been worth it. And I told Tony, I said, this weekend as we're walking and talking and having dinner and doing all of our date stuff, I said, the funny thing is that I never expected that marriage to be our marriage.
Yeah.
We've heard from a lot of you about how this podcast has changed your marriage, how One has changed your marriage. And just want you all to know from a very, from that spirit of transparency, is that you may not even be aware of how much all of you have done for our marriage.
Yeah. You've changed us.
This has changed our marriage for the better and does so on a daily basis. And it seems inadequate to say thank you, but that's all we have, is to say thank you, because never expected it, but realized this weekend that our marriage is the one that has been made better.
Yeah.
Through all of this.
And you guys have, and at least as they're tearing up a little bit, because it's truthful that, gosh, we get behind these mics every week to talk to you, but you've impacted us. You've impacted us for years to come, for years and years to come, and we will always be grateful for that. We will always be grateful for each and every one of you who's out there, who listens to us, who takes the time out of your busy day to peep in and hear what we got to say. So on that note, we say what we always say every week, and we mean it from the bottom of our hearts. We love you guys because you are one extraordinary marriage.
Thanks for listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast. We would love to hear from you. You can go ahead and give us a call at area code 858-876-5663 or send us an email to info@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. The website is oneextraordinarymarriage.com, and while you're there, you can sign up for our Marriage Minute Monday newsletter, and you can also purchase Tony and Elisa's new book, Stripped Down. It's available now in print, audio, and ebook formats. Also, the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast has sponsorship opportunities available now. If your business is interested in sponsoring this podcast, please contact us at oneextraordinarymarriage.com.